welcome you all. My name is Dagmar Painter, and for those of you who don't already know me, I'm the curator of the Gallery Al-Quds at the Jerusalem Fund. And we are very happy you're here this evening to see the wonderful work of our artist, Micaela Amato. And one of the things that we're going to be doing is Micaela will give a little small short talk, and then she and I are going to sit down and have a little question and answer period where I will ask her a few things that I think you probably all want to know. And then after that, we certainly would like for you to ask her some questions as well. I want to just speak for one moment about this particular show and why I have it. It's very different from some of the exhibitions that I've done in the past, certainly very abstract, but also the content of the exhibit. And but it actually falls into a very interesting line of exhibits that I've done in the past. And I think one of our artists has left, but I've done a number of shows that I'm interested in exploring people's families and the loss that they suffer, especially, as we all know, with Palestinians who have lost land, have lost villages, have lost family members. And Arabs in general. There's a great diaspora in the Arab world, people coming here, going to Europe for various reasons, personal and political. I did a show some time ago by Helen Suhaib called Stories My Father Told Me, which is about her family and their journey from Lebanon to the United States. I did another show some years ago by an artist named Adam Chami, who some of you might remember having seen, and it was called Of Refuge of Home. And let me just go ahead and show, this is one of the pieces from Helen's work, if some of you might have seen it or remember it. They're folk art stories of her family. And Adam's story was about he's Palestinian Texan, and his story was about the merging of that family and how they came from Palestine to Texas, and he talked about his Texan grandfather who was a sheriff and his Palestinian grandfather who was a sheriff in Palestine. So I'm very interested in these kinds of stories. I'm going to be doing an exhibit at the end of this year about the Sealy family, who have been in the Arab world for 5 generations, first as missionaries, later on as diplomats, and now as journalists, and ultimately one of them is the director of the Middle East Institute. So in this case, with Micaela, we have also a family story in many, many ways. This is a completely different kind of story because it is very much about a family of Arab Jews, Sephardic, Mizrahi, who have connections with Egypt, with Turkey, with Rhodes, with Morocco, with Iraq, and Palestine as well. And their grief and suffering, many of the pieces you'll see as she talks to you about them, are about personal family members, about personal struggles and personal loss, melancholy and longing. And these ideas resonate so much with all of us who have a strong interest in justice for the Palestinians for whom we are here working. And I really find that showing this kind of art and working with these kinds of artists gives us this universal connection that really helps us to understand how we can find a just peace and justice for, certainly for Palestine, but for all peoples. So now I'm going to turn it over to Micaela and have her give her talk, and then we will have a little bit of discussion, because I know you probably have a lot of questions about this art. Micaela Amato.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Dagmar. Thank you for your extraordinary hospitality and generosity. I really appreciate, Don and I have appreciated every minute being here with you and with a terrific staff here. The title of the show, as I'm sure you know by now, is Lam equals yes, no, between the scarab and the dung beetle. And it's a body of work that I've pulled together that over about, I don't know, I guess almost 40 years I've been working on this series, maybe even more. That is a cantejando for Tikkun Olam, a deep song, cantejando, a talisman to repair what has been broken, to reconcile disparate peoples, and to heal the earth. My work combines painting, photography, and sculpture from multiple series over the past, as I mentioned, I think almost, I've been working on this for at least 50 years actually. I'm almost 70, so I think it's pretty much, maybe it's even 60 years because I've been making things since I was a kid. And they always had to do with my family history, my family identity. And these works have mirrored a diverse group of exiles, nomads, tribes that are capable of living in harmony in spite of and because of their differences. These hybrid accretions of painted sculptures form an elliptical storytelling about a seemingly invisible people, Arab Jews. We are a people at the core of potential peace and a two-state solution for Palestinians and Jews. Both peoples are situated in a no man's land between the blessed scarab and the dung beetle, living in the contradictions of la'am, which, as you know, means yes, no. The scarab and the dung beetle, like the Palestinian and Arab Jew, are yin-yang, recto-verso, parallel and mirrored in their simultaneously oppositional and congruent identities. The scarab and the dung beetle, like the Palestinian and the Arab Jew, are the same creature, simultaneously a blessed mystical amulet and a wretched insect born into feces and destined to live in exile, to roll its home across the earth. Influenced by Sumerian art forms, my works are intended to evoke physical, spiritual, and cultural healing. Hamsas and amulets are placed on faces. There's a shell that's an amulet on the face of one of the cast glass sculptures to conjure healing poultices for spiritual and bodily wounds. Eyes are often closed and mouths are open in meditation and prayer. We are Arabs, Sephardic Mizrahi Oriental Jews, and have lived and coexisted with other Arabs across the near Middle East and North Africa, from Morocco and Libya and Tunisia to Turkey, Jerusalem, Yemen, India, Iran, Syria, Iraq, for over 3,000 years. Because we identify as Arab, we are not easily recognized by normative Jews, by German and Eastern European Ashkenazim, nor do we fit easily into the stereotype of Jew by Christians and Muslims. Ancient chronicles of the Arab Jew are at the origins, at the core of Near Middle Eastern and North African history, language, culture, sensibility. And I think that comes across in my work. Music, clothing, and obviously the omnipresent cuisine. Probably the only thing that people seem to talk about. As we all know, recent generations were forced to flee North Africa and Iran and Arabia for survival, abandoning our homes. We abandoned our homes and our lives. Somewhere between the blessed scarab and the persevering dung beetle lays the secret of peace in the Middle East, with the Arab Palestinian and the Arab Jew, now bitter cousins. When the world is out of balance, a deep song is urgently needed to heal the earth and repair what has been broken. Thank you. Sorry.
Again, thank you, Micaela, for that explanation. We've been all very intrigued with a number of questions that people have begun to ask about the work, and I'm going to try to bring up a few of those. There are a number of terms that you use that respond to musical terms and poetic terms. One of them being saudade, which I've just learned how to pronounce properly, which is a Portuguese term that indicates melancholy and longing. The other terms that you use are casida, which is a term for...
Well, casida is with a Q, obviously, is Arabic. And in Spain, it's casida. And casida, I first learned about in Spain. Did you want to say something? Okay, I really, many of you here probably have much more information than I actually, so I would really appreciate learning. So please tell me so I can move forward with much more information, okay? I learned about casida when I studied my Spanish heritage from Iberia, from Portugal, and from because we moved from Morocco into Portugal and then into Spain. And the poetry was obviously influenced by the Moors, and the juxtaposition of austerity and hyperbole, so a kind of extravagance and a kind of stoicism, very intense juxtapositions that are characteristic of casida with a Q. Most recently from Persia, from Iran, and the music that moves back and forth between Iran and Spain. Yeah.
So you have two pieces in the show that are titled casida, and they are both wooden constructions. With one has an attendant ceramic, like a rock but made out of ceramics, and the other has silk threads. But they are both sort of abstract wooden constructions. Can you tell us a little bit about the principle behind those constructions and how they elucidate this concept?
Yeah, they're really very different from each other, and I hadn't thought of it, but they are the contradictions that all of my work embodies. Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, sure. One of them has a very geometric, rigid format, and the other one is much more lyrical. And in fact, they both are one and the other of casida.
Talking about lyrical, one of the pieces that everyone here has enjoyed very much and has commented upon is your piece about Kulthum. And we've been, and for most of you know who she is, but Kulthum was the most famous Arabic singer in the Arab world. And when Kulthum died in Cairo, there were 10 million people who came into the streets and followed her coffin and gave her honor. And she had one of the most amazing voices that you could possibly imagine. So your piece is an evocation of the color of her voice. And I find that fascinating because the idea of trying to visually depict sound is something that I think you've accomplished very well.
Yeah. I don't really have anything to add to that, other than the flower is embedded in a rigid square, so there's tremendous discipline to her extraordinary passion.
In the 70s, early 70s. Yeah, I'm not sure the exact date, but early 70s. Yeah, exactly. Several people were asking me about the cast glass pieces, and could you talk just a little bit about technique, how cast glass is made, because it's certainly different from blown glass?
Yeah, it really is. First of all, I grew up in New York City, And I would go to the Metropolitan Museum and I would look at the Fayum portraits and stand there even as a child in junior high and cry because I thought that these were the burial sites of my family because they all looked like me, like us, like my father, like my grandmother, my grandfather. So pâte de verre, is that how you say it, Don? Pâte de verre is the cast glass technique that the Egyptians, I guess, started. I mean, maybe the Sumerians, actually. I hear about the Egyptians more than it's starting with Sumerians. But I made wax forms first, sculptures out of wax first. And then we made molds. The wax is heated and thrown away, and glass is poured into the plaster and heated, annealed for several weeks, sometimes even up to a month, up to temperature, then down and cooled, and then the plaster is thrown away.
How do you get the variation in color?
Just by luck. Just by luck. If you have the head upside down, so luckily I often want to have red or a pink color across the face because of the intensity of anguish and sorrow. So you can tilt it as you're throwing it in, and if most of it is one color and then you have the pink across the face, it's relatively easy.
Another piece that people have been asking questions about is the orange piece that's called Hallucinations of Baghdad. Could you talk a little bit about that piece?
Yeah, the dust. Yeah, it's pastel.
And also the form of the small holes.
Yeah. I actually love to use found materials, and have been doing it for a very, for, I don't know, 50 years, 60 years. And a couple of them were pieces I found in the shop where at Penn State University where I worked. And then I would cut them up and put them in relation to each other. And they were already drilled pieces of wood because they were used in the drill press to receive the drill as it went up and down. So all the holes are there by accident. Well, they're there as a function of the wood with the drill press, and then I just put them together and painted the black spheres, put pieces on the back and on the front. Yeah, so it's supposed to refer to the constellations in part, so land and sea and celestial bodies.
A lot of your pieces are photography of old pictures of family members, which you then put between glass and add accretions of fabric and other elements, and then paint on top, especially words. Is this layering of your pieces something that contributes to the feeling behind the piece?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I'm glad we're getting to that because I should have mentioned it already. The layers and layers and layers are necessary not just because they refer to the history of the earth, but the history of people's lives. And the transparency is very important. That's why I use plate glass and sometimes wire plate glass. It's very important to see what is now and what has been over successive generations, centuries, and all of it cumulatively must be considered for the piece to be really perceived. And the photograph, my father was a photographer. He actually had retinitis pigmentosa, so by the time he was 20, he was legally blind. But he's remained a photographer and made films for, I don't know, I guess till he was about 50, with our help, my sister's help and my help. And, in the dark room, but also, he would walk off the paces to see how far he was from his subject. And a lot of the photographs that I use are his photographs from Africa, from Turkey, from Egypt, from a variety of places that are a very different format. So I've always wanted to use the photograph as it exists in total, meaning with sprockets. I don't hide what it is. I want all of it to be seen simultaneously. So whatever the material, I don't want to camouflage what's there. I want to use the material for the integrity of that material.
I know that you relatively recently retired as Professor Emerita of Art at Penn State, and you've also had major exhibitions around the world, Art Basel, Miami, New York at Paula Cooper, and you've been a recipient of National Endowment of the Arts Foundation grants and done a lot of work. Could you tell us a little bit about how you balance a lifetime of teaching with a lifetime of making art?
Wow. It really, originally I didn't want to teach, I just wanted to work in my studio, and so I started just showing in New York, but then we needed money, and I was divorced from my first marriage, and I suddenly discovered that the juxtaposition of teaching, talking, and because I've always been a curator, so the writing, and talking, and trying to help students understand how to have integrity as an artist, and to find who they are, and not to worry about what they should be doing, but trying to understand that it all comes from the first person.